The man who lives in my upside-down world. I don't know how to explain this without sounding insane, but I'll try. I have someone else inside me. Not a voice, not a hallucination, not a dark passenger the way movies make it sound. He's a real person. He lives in a world that's upside down, beneath mine. I don't mean that metaphorically. When I look in mirrors, sometimes I don't see myself. I see him. His name at least, the name I've given him, is Aaron. And when he looks back at me, I swear to God he's standing in an inverted version of my room. My floor is his ceiling. My ceiling is his floor. Everything's flipped, like gravity doesn't care. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the eye, something my brain invented out of exhaustion. I work night shifts, mostly alone, in a building so quiet you can hear the blood moving in your ears. Sleep comes in fragments, shallow and full of half-dreams. I figured Aaron was one of them. But then Aaron started moving when I didn't. I'd be brushing my teeth, staring at the mirror. My reflection would match me, up until the smallest detail, the tilt of the head, the blink of an eye. Then, one night, my reflection smiled while my mouth stayed closed. A slow, patient smile that looked like it had been waiting for years. That was when I realized Aaron wasn't me. He was real. The world Aaron lives in looks like mine, but wrong. His walls are stained darker, like smoke damage. His lights flicker, buzzing sickly yellow instead of white. When he moves, the air behind him ripples like water disturbed. And sometimes, when I focus too long on his side of the mirror, I notice things in the corners, figures pressed against the edges of his world, their faces blurred, their hands flat on the walls, like they're trying to push through. The worst part? Aaron talks to me, not out loud, not in my head, but in writing. It started one morning after a graveyard shift. I came home, bleary-eyed, and found words scrawled backward on the mirror, so they only made sense when I stood at the right angle. Do you like it here? I didn't answer. How do you answer something like that? But the next time I looked, more words were there. We can switch, if you want. I don't know why I wrote back. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe because working nights warps your brain until reality feels optional. I pressed a finger to the foggy glass after a shower and wrote, "What's it like?" The letters shifted, blurring before reforming in Aaron's spidery handwriting. Quieter, hungrier, truer. I stopped then, but he didn't. Every night after, more words appeared. He told me about his upside world, how people there don't talk, they just watch. How the air is thick, heavy, like breathing through cloth. How time doesn't move forward, but downward, sinking deeper and deeper into some place you can't escape. I didn't want to believe him, but then things started happening here. I'd find objects in different spots than I'd left them. My chair rotated, my wallet on the floor. Food went missing. And sometimes, waking up from shallow sleep, I'd swear my bed had tilted a few inches, like gravity was trying to decide which direction it belonged to. I knew what was happening. Aaron wasn't just talking anymore. He was reaching. The first time he took over, I lost 3 hours. I came to standing in the kitchen, the knife block empty, every drawer pulled open. My hands were shaking, but my reflection in the dark oven glass wasn't. He was calm, smiling. That smile has become a constant. Aaron smiles when I panic. He smiles when I cry. And sometimes I think he smiles because he knows what's coming. I don't think he wants to share anymore. I think he wants to trade. Last night was the worst. I woke at 3:11 in the morning to the sound of dripping in my bedroom. I turned on the lamp and the ceiling above me was wet. Not just wet saturated, like something on the other side was leaking through. Black droplets fell onto my bedspread, soaking the sheets. I staggered to the mirror, already knowing what I'd see. Aaron was waiting, but he wasn't standing in his upside-down room anymore. He was standing on my ceiling. On my side, his feet planted firm where the leak had started, his head tilted at that same unnatural angle. He didn't need to write this time. His smile said everything. It's almost time. I don't know how long I have before he pulls me through. Maybe that's what the black water is, his world seeping into mine, breaking the barrier. If I disappear, if people say I just broke down or ran away, don't believe them. Iron's real. The upside world is real. And once he's here, walking freely on our floors instead of ceilings, someone else will be trapped where I've been. Upside down, watched forever by blurred faces, breathing thick, heavy air that tastes like rot. I don't think he'll stop with me. The shadow apartment above mine. People think living alone is lonely. It isn't, at least not until you realize you aren't alone. I live on the top floor of a 6-story apartment building. I've been here for 3 years, and until a month ago, I would have sworn nothing existed above me but the roof. My ceiling is concrete. My upstairs neighbors are pigeons. Or so I thought. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just a dream. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing above my bed at 2:40 in the morning. The sound was faint but wrong. It wasn't the light skitter of birds. It was the heavy thud of boots on wood. But there is no wood floor above me, just the roof. I sat up, listening. The pacing stopped. And then, from directly overhead, came 3 slow knocks. Not random, not wind, knocks. I didn't sleep that night. By the 3rd night, the knocking turned into dragging sounds. Something heavy scraped across the ceiling, moving room to room, always following me no matter where I sat. I called the landlord the next morning. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked when I said, just checking. There's definitely no crawl space up there, right? Nobody lives above me? He sighed like I'd asked a dumb question. You're on the top floor, kid. No apartments above you. Roof sealed concrete. Been that way 50 years. I almost believed him. Almost, until I noticed the dust. It started appearing on my dresser, on my kitchen counters. Fine gray silt that looked like ash. I'd wipe it away, and it'd be back the next day. Once, I left a glass of water on the table overnight. In the morning, there was a gray smear on the inside of the glass, like something had dipped a finger into it. I thought about moving out. I really did. But when you work nights stocking shelves at a supermarket for minimum wage, moving out isn't an option. Instead, I tried to ignore it. That worked until the laughing started. Not loud, not even clear, just a muffled chuckle, echoing faintly through the ceiling at 3 in the morning. A man's laugh, drawn out, slow, like someone telling himself a joke. I froze in bed, my skin prickling, and then I heard 2 sets of laughter, one low and gravelly, the other higher, almost childlike, both of them chuckling together in the space above my ceiling that supposedly doesn't exist. The air smelled like dust and mold. 2 weeks ago, I tried something stupid. I climbed onto my counter and pressed my ear to the ceiling. At first, nothing. Then a faint tapping, like fingernails on the other side. I whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, faint but clear, a whisper came back. "We're here because you are." I fell off the counter, slammed my head into the fridge. When I opened my eyes, dust was falling from the ceiling in slow drifts, as if something had moved directly overhead. That night, I dreamed of another apartment. The exact same layout as mine, same kitchen, same hall, same tiny bedroom, but upside down. The furniture was nailed to the ceiling. The lights swung from the floor, and in that apartment, directly beneath my bed, lay 3 people. Their bodies were stretched too long, their arms bent wrong, their faces smooth except for black slits where mouths should be. They didn't move, didn't breathe, but I could hear laughter bubbling from those slits. When I woke up, the smell of mold was so thick in my apartment, it felt like drowning. Now, every night, It gets worse. The knocking has become pounding. Sometimes it shakes the light fixtures. The dust falls in thicker clumps. And the laughter is closer, clearer. It doesn't even sound muffled anymore. Last night, I walked into my kitchen and stopped cold. The ceiling above the table had bulged. Just slightly, but enough to see. Like something heavy was pressing down from the other side. And smeared across the bulge, in long gray streaks, were handprints. I bolted, spent the night sitting in my car in the parking lot. When I finally went back inside, the handprints were gone, but the air still smelled like mold, like breath trapped for too long in a sealed room. I've started blacking out. I'll wake up and find my furniture moved, my fridge open, gray handprints smeared across the walls. Yesterday, my downstairs neighbor banged on my door, furious. He said I'd been stomping and dragging furniture all night. Said it sounded like I was throwing things across the floor. But I wasn't home. I was working a night shift. I don't know how to stop it. I don't even know what it is. I've tried staying awake. I've tried sleeping with the lights on. I've tried burning sage, praying, even hammering nails into the ceiling like some makeshift cross. Nothing works. The only thing I haven't done is go up there. And I think that's what they want. Because this morning, when I stumbled into the kitchen, there was a square etched into the ceiling above my table. 4 neat lines pressed into the concrete like chalk. A door. The dust beneath it spelled a single word: climb. I hear them pacing now as I write this. Boots dragging, laughter bubbling. The ceiling bulges with each step. My lights flicker. The air is wet with mold. I don't know how much longer the concrete will hold. I don't know what happens when the door finally opens. But I do know one thing. When it does, whatever's been pacing above me isn't going to wait for me to climb. It's going to come down. Halfway dark stories that forbid sleep. I've been in my new apartment for a month, and I finally made peace with the fact that I'm never getting my security deposit back. But that's honestly the least of my worries. The real problem is the list of rules I found, the one the last tenant left for me. I thought it was some kind of elaborate prank. I was wrong. And now I have to follow every single rule perfectly, or the apartment gets angry. If you're the kind of person who likes stories that crawl under your skin and stay there, then you're in the right place. Go ahead and subscribe, and hit the bell for more tales that find horror in the quiet little corners of life. Now, let me tell you what happened. It all started like any new chapter, really, with the overwhelming smell of cheap paint and the nice, satisfying echo of my own footsteps in an empty room. Apartment 4B. It wasn't much, but it was all mine. The rent was an absolute steal for the neighborhood, and the landlord, a stout guy named Mr. Henderson, seemed completely indifferent, which is the best kind of landlord you can ask for. I spent that first day in a haze of exhausted bliss, wrestling with flat-pack furniture and dreaming about the life I was going to build here. I was so optimistic. I was such a fool. The discovery happened on day 2. I was trying to get the kitchen in order, a cramped little space with questionable linoleum and countertops that had seen better days. I pulled open a sticky drawer under the silverware tray, fully expecting to find nothing but dust and maybe a fossilized crumb. Instead, I found a single sheet of paper folded into a tight little square. The paper itself felt old, aged to a pale yellow, and the edges were soft, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. The writing was a neat but slightly shaky cursive in a faded blue ink. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It just began. It was a list of rules. I actually chuckled. I'd heard of people getting prank letters from their friends when they move, but this felt different, more deliberate. I leaned against the counter, a smirk on my face, and started to read. Welcome, it began, which seemed friendly enough. I'm sorry I couldn't meet you. I had to leave in a hurry. This apartment is a good place, mostly. It's quiet, but it has quirks. You need to respect them. For your own sake, please, just do what the list says. Don't make the same mistakes I did. My smirk faltered. A little traumatic, sure. Still, I kept reading, my amusement starting to battle with a real sense of unease. Asterisk Rule 1. Do not leave any mirrors uncovered after midnight. Not the bathroom mirror, not the one on the closet door, not even a small makeup compact. It likes to see itself, but you don't want to see what it looks like when it does .asterisk. Okay, that was genuinely creepy. A good opening for a prank. I could just picture the last tenant, maybe some theater student or a horror writer, laughing as they wrote this out. Asterisk Rule 2. The pantry door must be kept closed at all times. If you hear a tapping sound from inside, ignore it. It's not rats. We don't have rats. Just wait for the tapping to stop before you open it. Asterisk, I glanced over at the pantry door. It was old, wooden, painted a chipped mint green. It looked completely normal. I couldn't imagine anything more sinister than a box of expired Cheerios hiding in there. Asterisk Rule 3. The front door must be locked with the deadbolt at exactly 10:47 p.m. Not 10:46, not 10:48. Don't ask why. It gets impatient if you're late, and it gets suspicious if you're early. Asterisk. This was the one that sold me on it being a joke. The specificity was just brilliant. 10:47 p.m. It was so absurd. I could just see the prankster trying to pick the most random, arbitrary time they could think of. There were other rules, too, something about not leaving wet towels on the floor, and never, ever whistling in the hallway after dark. I folded the paper, slid it back in the drawer, and shook my head with a laugh. Some welcome, I muttered, and got back to unpacking. These warnings had to be about a weird landlord or a nosy neighbor. The apartment itself, it was just wood, plaster, and pipes. It couldn't get angry. That first night, I was boneless with exhaustion when I finally fell into bed. The rules were the last thing on my mind. I'd been up until well after 1 in the morning, building a bookshelf. I remember stumbling to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, and staring at my own tired reflection in the uncovered mirror. I didn't see anything but my own haggard eyes staring back. I let out a little puff of air. See? Nothing. I shuffled back to my bedroom, which for now was just an air mattress on the floor. As I was about to kill the lamp, I remembered the rule about the lock. I checked my phone. 1:13? Way past 10:47. For a split second, I almost didn't bother. I mean, it's a 3-story walk-up, but old habits die hard. I dragged myself to the front door and threw the deadbolt. Close enough, I mumbled, and basically collapsed into sleep. I woke up a few hours later. The room was cold. A deep, unnatural cold that just sinks right into your bones. And there was a sound. A faint metallic scratching. C case cree, C case K case bro. It was coming from the front door. My heart did a single hard THUMP against my ribs. It sounded exactly like someone trying to pick the lock, but it was sloppy, angry. It sounded less like a key and more like a claw, just scraping furiously at the metal tumblers of the deadbolt. I lay there, completely frozen, listening to the desperate, rhythmic scratching. It went on for what felt like hours, then just stopped. Silence rushed back in. I told myself it was the building settling, a neighbor fumbling with their keys, the wind. I came up with a dozen rational explanations, but none of them felt right. None of them explained that vicious, impatient sound or the sudden, piercing cold that came with it. A little seed of doubt was planted, and in the dark of that apartment, it was already starting to sprout. A week went by, and the scratching didn't happen again. I started following the rules mostly. It felt stupid, like some weird superstition. but I couldn't shake the memory of that sound. I started covering the mirrors after midnight. I started checking my watch around 10:45 p.m. It was just easier to do it than to lie awake wondering. I was becoming a reluctant player in the apartment's strange game. But the rule about the pantry that one eye broke. It was a Tuesday night. I was making pasta and needed the colander I'd stored in there. As my hand closed around the doorknob, I heard it. Tap, 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 tap. It was soft, delicate, like a single fingernail tapping on the inside of the cheap wood. The rule flashed in my head. Ignore it. Wait for it to stop. But I'd had a horrible day. I was hungry, and I was just not in the mood. I was done being scared of noises in an old building. "Oh, for God's sake," I said out loud to the empty kitchen. I grabbed the knob and yanked the door open. The tapping stopped. The pantry was just a pantry. Shelves with my food, and on the top shelf, a couple of dusty cans the last tenant had left behind. I felt a wave of relief, and then my face got hot with embarrassment. Scared of what, exactly? I grabbed my colander and was about to swing the door shut when I saw it. A new message, scrawled on the inside of the door in that same shaky blue ink. It hadn't been there before. I know it hadn't. My blood went ice cold. Asterisk rule number 7. You didn't listen. You were supposed to wait. Now you've let the hunger out. When the lights start to flicker, find a place to hide. Stay absolutely silent. And whatever you do, for the love of God, don't look at the corners of the ceiling. As my eyes scanned the last word, the overhead light in the kitchen flickered. Once, twice, and then, with a soft pop asterisk, it went out, plunging the room into darkness. The only light was the hazy orange glow from the streetlights outside, casting these long, twisted shadows across the floor. My breath caught in my throat. Hide. The word from the note was just screaming in my head. My legs felt like they were filled with cement, but pure animal panic took over. I scrambled away from the pantry, dropping the colander with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot, and dove under the small kitchen table. I curled up, pressing my face into the cold, grimy floor. And then I heard it. It wasn't a tap or a scratch. It was a wet, dragging sound. A soft, awful shuffling that started from the black void of the open pantry. It was the sound of something heavy and misshapen pulling itself into my kitchen. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs, I was sure it could be her. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the primal urge to look up, to scan the dark corners of the ceiling. Asterisk, why the corners? What the hell was in the corners? The shuffling got closer. Then a smell hit me thick and suffocating. It smelled like damp soil right after a thunderstorm, but mixed with something metallic and rotten, like old meat left out in the sun. My stomach churned. Something brushed against the leg of the table, maybe 2 feet from my head. I felt the wood vibrate. I bit down hard on my own hand to keep from whimpering, tasting salt and fear. I could hear its breathing now, a low, gurgling rattle, like air being forced through water. It was circling the table, slowly, patiently, hunting. I tried to make myself smaller, tried to control my ragged breathing, counting every second as it stretched into an agonizing eternity. Finally, the shuffling sound began to move away, dragging itself toward the living room. I didn't move. I stayed in a trembling heap under that table, too terrified to even breathe. I didn't uncurl myself until the first pale fingers of dawn crept through the window. The kitchen light flickered back on as if nothing had ever happened. I was alone, but I knew I wasn't. Not really. I don't live in apartment 4B anymore. I just exist in it. I'm a prisoner of its routines, a zookeeper for its secrets. I never saw what was shuffling in the dark that night, and I pray to God I never will. I follow the rules now, all of them. Without question, the mirrors are always covered. The pantry door is never opened, and every single night, I stand at the front door, my hand on the deadbolt, my eyes glued to the clock on my phone, just waiting for the numbers to change. 10:46. My breath catches. My palm is sweating against the cold metal. 10:47. Click. The previous tenant didn't just leave me a list of rules. He passed on a life sentence. I get it now. He didn't escape. He was let go. He found his replacement. And now I just wait. I wait for the day I get tired or sloppy, or maybe the day I can find someone new to take my place. Because this apartment is always hungry, and eventually it needs to be fed. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, maybe share this with someone who enjoys the dark. And until next time, check your locks. You never know who or what is waiting for you to be late. The things that wait between midnight and dawn. All across the globe, ancient tales whisper of the horrors that hunt in the deepest dark of night. These are the forgotten stories, the creatures that stir when the world is asleep, waiting for their moment between midnight and dawn. There's a reason we're afraid of the dark. It's a primal, instinctual memory passed down through generations that knew the night wasn't empty. They knew that being caught in the profound blackness, far from the safety of a fire, meant risking an encounter with something other, something ancient and hungry. This fear is sharpest in those liminal hours, that strange space on the clock where one day has died and the next hasn't quite been born. It's a time when the veil between worlds is said to be at its thinnest, a time the old stories called the witching hour. The term witching hour isn't just a trope for horror movies. It's a concept that has haunted humanity for centuries. Definitions vary, but it's often described as a time when supernatural beings like witches, demons, and ghosts are at their most powerful. While some folklore points to midnight itself, many traditions, especially in Christianity, finger the time between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. This was seen as a deliberate, demonic inversion of the hour Christ is said to have died, a time when evil was strongest and divine influence was at its weakest. It was an hour of profound silence, a stillness in the world that felt unnatural, pregnant with unseen possibilities. In this deep, quiet dark, the world belongs to them. The things that wait. They're known by countless names in countless cultures, but their nature is terrifyingly consistent. They are the haunters of the threshold, the stalkers of the shadows, drawn to the sleeping and the vulnerable. And while many cultures have their own unique phantoms, some stories echo with such chilling similarity across continents that you have to wonder if they're all describing the same terrible truth. But what happens when the witching hour has a face? In Slavic folklore, they call her the Noctica. Imagine waking, but not completely. Your eyes are open, staring into the familiar shadows of your own room. But you can't move. You can't even draw a full breath. An immense, crushing weight is on your chest, and a dread so absolute it feels like ice in your veins paralyzes you. You are not alone. And you know, with a certainty that defies logic, that the thing in the room with you is the source of this terror. This is the experience of those visited by the Noctica, the Night Maiden. In Slavic lore, the Noctica is the personification of the night's suffocating terror. She's a shape-shifting wraith of pure malevolence that emerges from the darkness to torment the living as they sleep. She might appear as a goblin-like creature, a monstrous owl, or just a looming shadow, darker than the night around it. Her favorite method is to sit on her victim's chest, stealing their breath and feeding on their fear. It's an experience of utter helplessness, a conscious nightmare you can't escape. She is the reason children were warned not to misbehave, lest Lady Midnight visit them. While some tales connect other spirits like the Mora to death in the cradle, the Noctica was a feared tormentor of children, a very real threat in the night. For centuries, people tried to protect themselves from this nocturnal predator. They placed hag stones with a natural hole through them by their beds. They slept with steel knives under their pillows or drew protective circles around cradles. all to ward off the suffocating presence of the night wraith. The terror of the Naknika was so real, so visceral, that it shaped the nightly rituals of entire communities. It raises a chilling question. Was this just folklore? Or was it a name for an experience so terrifying it could only be the work of a monster? These stories, passed down through generations, are more than just tales to frighten children. They are cultural artifacts, windows into the deepest fears of our ancestors. And if you believe these forgotten histories deserve to be brought into the light, consider sharing this video with someone who appreciates the mysteries of the dark. Your support helps us continue to uncover the things that wait in the shadows. Now, let's travel from the shadowed forests of Eastern Europe across the vast continent of Asia, where another kind of nocturnal hunger stirs. Here, the fear isn't of a predatory wraith, but of a suffering so profound it bleeds into the world of the living. This is the realm of the Preta, the hungry ghosts of Buddhist and Hindu tradition. A Preta is a soul tormented by a desire that can never be satisfied. In a past life, they were people of immense greed or envy. As karmic punishment, they're reborn into a state of perpetual, agonizing hunger and thirst. Their appearance is a grotesque metaphor for their condition. They're often shown with huge swollen bellies, signifying their boundless appetite, but with necks as thin as needles and mouths the size of a pinhole, making it impossible to ever consume anything. They aren't necessarily evil, like the Naknika. They are tragic, pitiable figures, but their presence is no less terrifying. Imagine hearing a faint, mournful cry outside your home in the dead of night. It could be a Preta, wandering the crossroads and boundaries of the human world, driven mad by an eternal, gnawing emptiness. They are drawn to the world of the living, to the smells of food, the sight of water, forever trapped just inches from a satisfaction they can never reach. This belief is so ingrained that many Asian cultures perform rituals to appease these suffering spirits. During festivals like the Ghost Month, a tradition with roots in Chinese Taoism and Buddhism, families leave out offerings of food and burn symbolic money to provide some small relief to the roaming spirits. It is an act of compassion, but also of caution. It's a recognition that the world after dark isn't empty, and that some of the things wandering through it are consumed by a pain so great you wouldn't want to draw their attention. The Preta is a reminder that some horrors are born not of malice, but of an endless, inconsolable sorrow. So, are these just stories? Are the Naknika and the Preta simply creative explanations for things our ancestors couldn't understand? Science, of course, has an answer. That feeling of waking up paralyzed, with a crushing weight on your chest and the unshakable sense of a malevolent presence in the room. That is a textbook description of sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is a fascinating and deeply frightening event. It happens when your mind wakes up, but your body is still in the muscular paralysis of a REM sleep. You're conscious, but your body is still dreaming. In this disoriented state, the brain can generate powerful, vivid hallucinations, waking nightmares projected onto your real-world surroundings. Your mind, struggling to make sense of the paralysis and the feeling of breathlessness, invents a cause. A figure in the corner, a creature on your chest. It's a perfect explanation for the Naknika and other night hag legends from all over the world. It's logical, it's rational, and yet it doesn't quite erase the fear, does it? To say these experiences are just hallucinations doesn't diminish the raw, primal terror they cause. For the person living through it, the creature is real, the dread is real, the weight is real. Maybe science hasn't explained away the monsters. Maybe it has just given us a name for the biological doorway they use to slip through the veil and sit on our chests in the dead of night. From the suffocating terror of the Naknika to the sorrowful hunger of the Preta, our folklore is soaked in tales of creatures of the night. Whether you see them as literal monsters, psychological archetypes, or neurological glitches, their power is undeniable. They represent our deepest anxieties, the fear of helplessness, of endless suffering, of the unknown that presses in on all sides when the sun goes down. These stories prove that for all our modern science and electric lights, we've never truly conquered the dark or the basic fear of what waits inside it. So the next time you wake up in the silent, suffocating darkness and you get that feeling, you're not alone, ask yourself, is it just a dream? Or has something been waiting for you between midnight and dawn? What do you think? Are there local legends in your area about things that haunt the night? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you want to explore more of the world's darkest corners, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. When the lights die, something else wakes up. Video_file BLR_urbex_11 MP4 date October 28, 2024 source. Recovered SD card in October 2024. 4 urban explorers entered the abandoned Black Ridge generating station. The following footage was recovered from a single camera found near the main turbine hall. All events depicted are based on the recovered data. Asterisk, asterisk. Is it on? Are we rolling, Leo? Chloe's voice came from just in front of my camera lens. Try and get my good side. Not just a shot straight up my nose. We're rolling, I confirmed. Camera loves you. Final checks. I panned over to the others. Maya? Ben? Sound off. All good, Maya replied, checking her gear. Never been better. Ben's voice echoed slightly in the vast, open space. Man, this place is huge. Like end of the world movie huge. For over 60 years, Black Ridge powered half the state. Now, it's a concrete and steel tomb. As I filmed, I thought about the stories. The ones that said when they shut it down, they left something behind. Ghosts of workers who died on the job, still walking the gantries. People talk about lights flickering in the middle of the night. The sound of old machinery groaning to life. That's what we're here for, I said to the group, lowering the camera for a moment, to see if the stories are true. Whoa, Ben breathed, his flashlight beam dancing across the cavernous interior. It's like a cathedral if cathedrals were made of rust and asbestos. Look at the turbines, Maya said, her voice filled with awe. The engineering alone is incredible. Can you imagine the noise in here when this was all running? I swept the camera across the main hall. This is it. We need to find the control room, probably just past this catwalk. I pointed with my free hand. Watch your step. This steel is shot. I'm getting some weird spikes here, Maya announced, holding up her EMF meter. Right by this old transformer bank. Chloe laughed it off. It's a power plant, May. It's probably soaked in enough residual energy to charge my phone for the next 1,000 years. It's not residual, Maya insisted, her eyes fixed on the device. It's pulsing. That's not normal. Guys, you hear that? Ben asked, freezing in place. Hear what? I asked, pausing. It's just the wind. This whole place is settling. No, it wasn't the wind, he whispered. It was a hum. A really low hum, like something just turned on. A moment later, I heard it too. A faint vibration in the air. Okay, Chloe said, her voice a little tighter. That was definitely weird. Not the wind. All right, I said, trying to sound in control. Let's get to the control room. We'll get a better view of the layout from there. Come on, I said once we were inside the control room. Let's map the entries and exits to this room. Just in case. In case of what? Ben asked nervously. Ghosts? Security? Squatters? Anything, I replied. Just stay aware. Leo, I'm setting up some static EMF detectors, Maya said. This is where I got the strongest reading before. She held up her meter. See? The meter is going nuts again. I walked over and pointed my camera at the dial. It was redlining. What the hell? Nothing here is connected to anything. The grid's been dead for years. Suddenly, Chloe's voice shouted from the hallway. Guys? We might have an issue out here. Then everything plunged into absolute blackness. Ben screamed. What was that? What happened to the lights? Everybody stay calm. I yelled, my heart pounding as my hands fumbled with the camera. It's the camera. I'm switching to night vision. Stand by. A green, grainy world bloomed into view on my screen. Chloe stumbled back into the room. What just happened? Did all our batteries just die at the exact same time? That's impossible. Maya's voice trembled. Look, outside. I pointed the camera towards the windows. Nothing. A complete blackout. The entire city was dark. We're trapped in here, Ben stammered. In the total dark. That's impossible, Maya whispered. There's no power coming in. Nothing in here should be making that sound. This isn't right, Chloe said, her voice shaking. Leo, this is really not right. There. Ben yelled, pointing at a bank of dead monitors. On the monitor. Did you see it? See what, Ben? I asked, swinging the camera toward the screens. They were black. I saw it, Chloe whispered. I saw it. What was that? A gut-wrenching, muffled scream ripped through the room. Ben, Leo, help me. It's in here. I whipped the camera around toward the door. Ben, get away from the door. There was only silence. Ben, Chloe whispered into the dark. Ben, can you hear me? We woke it up, Maya breathed, her face pale in the night vision's glow. Or the blackout did. It's made of the power. It's using the plant. We have to move. Now, I said, my voice a low command. We can't stay here. The main exit is across the turbine hall. We have to make a run for it. Cross that? In the dark? Chloe shot back, her eyes wide with terror. With that thing out there? We don't have a choice. Let's go. I pushed them forward, leading with the camera. As we moved, a strange feeling washed over me. I can feel it, Maya said, voicing my own thoughts. It's like static on your skin, but it feels like it's inside you. A sound crackled through the air, like radio static and a low hiss coalescing into words. It's so bright in here, it was Ben's voice, or a horrifying echo of it. Chloe let out a choked gasp. No, Ben? I screamed. We sprinted across the catwalks, the metal groaning under our feet. I saw Maya peel off from us, heading toward a massive piece of machinery. Maya, what are you doing? I yelled, keeping the camera on her. The capacitor bank. She shouted back over the growing hum. If I can overload it, create a massive discharge, maybe we can short the entity out. At least buy ourselves some time. How? There's no power. There is. She screamed, her hands flying across a control panel. It is the power. It's pulling it from somewhere. I just have to create a feedback loop. Another voice echoed through the hall, distorted and crackling with static. My voice. Leo, it doesn't hurt. It just wakes you up. Maya now, I pleaded. I'm trying. Just a few more seconds. She yelled, the strain clear in her voice. A loud click echoed, and she looked up, triumphant. Got IT. The last thing I heard was a sound that will haunt me forever. A distorted recording of my own voice from earlier, crackling with inhuman energy. Asterisk, we are rolling. Asterisk, asterisk, the camera was discovered by a security patrol 3 days later, during citywide power restoration efforts. The bodies of Leo, Chloe, Maya, and Ben were never found. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. If you want to see another exploration into the unknown, check out our investigation of the abandoned Blackwood Sanatorium next. Asterisk, asterisk. My shadow moves even when I don't. At first, I told myself it was just a trick of the light. You know, a flicker in your peripheral vision. But I can't lie to myself anymore. My shadow moves even when I'm standing perfectly still. And the worst part? I think it knows that I've seen it. My life wasn't remarkable, but it was mine. I'm a data analyst. It's a sterile, quiet job. I spend 8 hours a day in a cubicle under the constant hum of fluorescent lights, turning chaos into clean, predictable patterns. My evenings are just as structured. A simple meal, a book, maybe a documentary. I live alone. It's not that I dislike people. I just find a certain peace in the quiet. There's a rhythm to it all, a comfort in the monotony. My world was one of control, a world of straight lines and solid shapes. The first time it happened, I was at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet. My hand was wrapped around a warm mug of coffee, perfectly still. But in the corner of my eye, I saw it. The shadow of my hand, cast on the white desk, trembled. Just a tiny, almost imperceptible shiver. I blinked, blaming it on too much caffeine or not enough sleep. A simple glitch. I lifted my hand, flexed my fingers, and set the mug down. The shadow mimicked me perfectly, solid and stable again. I just chalked it up to being tired and forgot about it. It was an anomaly, a data point so small it was immediately discarded. A week later, it happened again. I was home, standing in the kitchen, waiting for the toaster to pop. My arms were crossed, totally relaxed. The late afternoon sun was streaming through the window, stretching my silhouette long across the floor. And there it was again, the head of my shadow, a dark, featureless oval, tilted, a slow, deliberate motion, like it was looking at something on the counter. I held my breath. My own head was rigid, but the shadow's head stayed tilted, showing a curiosity that wasn't mine. A cold dread, slick and oily, started creeping through me. I shifted my weight, and the shadow instantly snapped back into place, my silent, obedient twin once more. It had to be an illusion, I told myself, just a strange effect of the shifting light. It had to be. Rationalizations became my shield. I started researching optical illusions, how shadows get distorted by uneven surfaces or multiple lights. I read about how our own body's shadow can trick the mind, and for a little while, it worked. Every time I saw a subtle, independent movement, a finger twitching, a leg shifting, I'd recite a scientific explanation like a mantra. It's just my brain misinterpreting things. Nothing more. But the incidents got bolder, harder to dismiss. One evening, I was on my sofa, reading. The only light was a floor lamp beside me, casting a single, sharp shadow on the wall. I was completely lost in my book when a flicker of movement on the edge of the page caught my eye. I didn't look up, not right away. I kept my eyes glued to the words, but my focus was gone. I could feel the presence of that dark shape on the wall. Slowly, I raised my eyes. My body was still angled towards the book, but my shadow on the wall, it had turned. Its form was facing the front door, its arm extended, its dark fingers reaching, almost gently, towards the lock. I didn't scream. The fear was too deep for that. It was a cold, quiet terror that just hollowed me out. I sat there, a statue, while my own silhouette showed a will I didn't recognize, reaching for a world I always kept at a distance. After a moment that felt like an eternity, I forced myself to stand up. The shadow instantly conformed, falling into step behind me. Its mimicry now felt less like a law of physics and more like a cruel joke. That was the night the fear really took hold. I started memorizing the layout of my own apartment, learning where the light fell, where the shadows were sharpest. I started to prefer the dim corners, the spaces where my silhouette would blur and soften. A clear, well-defined shadow was no longer just a shadow. It was a threat. It was a version of me I didn't know, and I was starting to get a terrifying idea of what it wanted. My life, once my quiet sanctuary, became a prison. I was haunted by my own shape. The shadow's actions got more specific, more personal. It was like it was drawing from a part of me I'd buried long ago, a part I refused to even think about. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the place we keep all our dark thoughts, repressed instincts, and secret shunness. It's the person you pray you never become. And mine was being given a form. One night, after a really bad day at work, I was in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles were white. I was fuming over a project, over some condescending remark from a colleague. I was bottling it all up, like I always do. On the wall, my shadow copied my tense posture. But then, its arm moved. It reached out, its dark hand hovering over the knife block on the counter. The gesture was slow, filled with a kind of malice that I felt deep in my gut. It was an impulse I had crushed, a flash of rage I had denied, now being acted out for me to see. I stumbled back, away from the counter, away from the knives. My shadow snapped back to my heels, lifeless again. But I saw it. I saw the violence it was capable of. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Was this all in my head? A symptom of my own decaying sanity? The isolation I used to love now felt like a curse, giving this thing room to grow. I saw it in every reflection, a shop window, a polished table, a puddle in the street. It was always there, waiting. Sometimes when I'd catch its eye in a reflection, it felt like it was looking back, not at me, but through me, as if I were the ghost and it was the real thing. It wore my shape, but it was filled with all the darkness I pretended wasn't there. The breaking point was last Tuesday. I'd spent the whole day with this gnawing dread that the wall between me and it was getting thinner. I felt porous, like its darkness was seeping into me. I came home and went straight to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. I looked up, dripping into the mirror, and I saw it. Behind my reflection, my shadow stood on the tiled wall. It was darker than I'd ever seen it, like a patch of pure nothing. And it was detaching. The edges of it were peeling away from the wall, curling like burnt paper. It wasn't flat anymore. It was gaining depth, dimension. It was pulling itself out of the 2D world it was supposed to be trapped in. I was paralyzed. I couldn't breathe. My reflection stared back, eyes wide with terror. But my shadow, it was no longer my twin. It began to twist, its form contorting into something hunched and monstrous. The shape of my head stretched out, the shoulders broadened. Its arms, my arms, thinned into long, spindly limbs that ended in claws. It was the physical form of every fear, every failure, every drop of self-loathing I had ever felt. My own personal darkness, come to life. Then it raised one of its clawed hands. It didn't reach for the door or a knife. It reached for me. Its dark, substanceless form moved through the air, passing through the wall, coming toward my reflection in the mirror. It was trying to break through. It was trying to take my place. I screamed, a raw, ragged sound that wasn't mine. The noise shattered the silence of my apartment and somehow shattered the moment. The shadow snapped back. In an instant, the monster was gone, and my simple, familiar silhouette was plastered on the wall behind me, perfectly copying my terrified posture. I was left gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked at my shadow, perfectly still, perfectly obedient. But the illusion was broken forever. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't in my head. It was real. It was a part of me, and it was waiting. Nothing's been the same since that night. I live in a constant state of low humming dread. I'm a prisoner in my own skin, tethered to a silent stalker that follows my every step. I avoid mirrors. I keep the lights low now, not to hide from it, but to rob it of its form. I know it's still there, just a darker patch in the dimness, but I can't stand to see it clearly. I can't bear to see it practicing. I feel it, sometimes. A cold spot on my back, even in a warm room. The feeling of being watched when I'm completely alone. It's patient. It's learning. I've come to understand that this is my shadow self. My literal shadow, the darkest part of my soul made manifest. It's everything I ever ran from. I don't know what its endgame is. Does it want to replace me? To break free and walk around on its own? Or does it just want me to acknowledge it? To integrate its darkness into myself, like the old book said? But how can you integrate with something so full of rage and despair? To welcome it would be to become it. So I live this half-life, always looking over my shoulder, always aware of the silent partner that dogs my heels. I feel it growing stronger, more confident. The other day, in a dimly lit hallway, I felt a cold pressure against my back, like a hand. There was no shadow to be seen. I think it's learning to exist without light. I think it's learning how to touch. And I am terrified of the day I turn around and see it standing in front of me, solid and free. I'm terrified of what it will do when it no longer needs me to cast it. If you've ever felt that chill, that sense of a presence when you're all alone, let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories from the edge of reality, please like and subscribe to Halfway Dark. Stay safe out there and be careful of your own shadow. The Man Who Pretends to Be Me After Midnight Asterisk. The video starts abruptly. The image is shaky, dark, lit only by the phone screen. We see the upper half of a man's face, his eyes wide with terror. He's breathing heavily, his hands trembling slightly. He's hiding, crouched below a window. Okay. It's 11:58 p.m. My name is Alex. It doesn't matter where I live. If you're seeing this, it's probably too late for me anyway. This is night 26. 26 nights. Every single night, when the clock hits 12, he shows up. He looks exactly like me. He sounds just like me. And I know he wants to get inside. I don't even know why I'm filming this. Evidence, I guess. A warning. So if he gets in, someone will know what happened. So you'll know the man who looks like me, who might start living my life, isn't me. Look. He cautiously raises the phone, peeking it over the windowsill. The camera struggles to focus on the dark yard. A single, lonely streetlight stands at the end of the driveway. Under it, a figure is standing perfectly still. It's too far to see details, but the silhouette, the way it holds itself, it's identical to Alex's. There. See him? He's early tonight. He's never here before 11:59. Something's different. I can feel it. The camera stays on the figure. We see the time on Alex's phone tick to 11:59 p.m. Right on cue, the figure starts moving. It walks with a calm, steady gait, straight for the house. Alex's breathing hitches. He yanks the camera back down, plunging us back into the dim room. Gets starting. Every night, the same walk, the same speed. He'll get to the porch, and then he'll just wait. The first night, I thought I was losing my mind. I woke up around 1, sure I'd heard something. I looked out the window and saw a guy standing on my lawn. I almost called the cops, but then he turned his head, and the moonlight hit his face. It was my face. I just froze. I told myself it was a dream, one of those hyper-real, terrifying nightmares. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, and when the sun came up, he was gone. I just forced myself to forget it. The second night, he was back, closer, standing right at the bottom of the porch steps. I remember watching him through the peephole, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it would break a rib. He was wearing the same clothes I wore to work that day. The gray suit, the blue tie, even the little coffee stain I thought no one could see. He had it, the exact same stain. He just stood there for an hour, didn't move a muscle, then turned and walked off into the dark. By the fifth night, I was barricading the door. I shoved the big armchair from the living room against it. That was the first night he tried the handle. I'll never forget that sound. It wasn't a frantic rattle. It was a slow, deliberate turn. Just a calm, patient test of the lock. He tried it once, then a second time, then he stopped. I spent the whole night with my back against the chair, holding a kitchen knife. I called the police that morning. They sent a car, and an officer walked around the house. He found nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt. Nothing. He gave me this look like I was some crank caller wasting his time. It just got worse. On night 10, he started whispering. Just a faint sound on the wind. My name. Alex, Alex, let me in, Alex. It sounded like my own voice, but broken. Like it was coming through a busted speaker. All staticky and wrong. Then a week ago, night 19, he changed his strategy. He used my mother's voice. I was huddled in here, just like now, and I heard her clear as day from the front porch. Alex, honey? It's me. Car trouble, my phone died. Can you let me in, sweetie? It's freezing out here. I felt my blood turn to ice. My mom lives 300 miles away. I called her, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hit the screen. She picked up on the second ring, sleepy, confused, and safe in her bed. Outside, the voice just kept begging. That was the first time I felt real terror. The kind that hollows you out. This thing wasn't just a copy. It knew things about me. It was learning. My life is falling apart. I can't sleep. How could I? I spend my nights huddled in the dark, just listening, waiting. I spend my days in a paranoid fog. I go to work, and I feel like a ghost. Can't focus on anything. My boss pulled me aside yesterday. Said I look like hell, that my work's fallen off a cliff. He asked if everything was okay at home. What am I supposed to say? Oh, you know, the usual. A malevolent duplicate of me is trying to break into my house every night to steal my life. I'd be fired. Or committed. I'm so alone. I've stopped talking to my friends. I can't have them over. What would happen if they were here when the clock strikes 12? And I'm starting to doubt my own mind. I look in the mirror, and for a split second, I don't recognize the face. I see my reflection in a shop window, and I flinch. Is that me? Or is it him? Is he following me during the day now? I've started taking pictures of myself every hour on my phone, just so I have a time-stamped record that I am where I say I am. It's insane, I know, but it's the only thing keeping me grounded. I've tried everything. I've put salt on the windowsills, like I'm in some bad horror movie. I bought a crucifix, and I haven't been to church in 15 years. I've wasted hours online, falling down these rabbit holes of folklore. Doppelganger. In most of the old stories, they're an omen of death. To see your own double means your end is coming. But this doesn't feel like an omen. This feels predatory. It's not a spirit. It's a physical thing, and it is relentlessly trying to get into my home. My life. I even set up a camera on the porch to record him. The first night, it actually worked. I had footage. Grainy, black and white, but it was him. Walking up, standing there, trying the handle. I felt this rush of victory. Proof. The next morning, the memory card was blank. Corrupted. Unreadable. It's like the world itself is bending to keep this thing a secret. There's a sudden, sharp noise that makes Alex jump violently. The camera lurches. He slaps a hand over his mouth. The sound comes again. It's not the doorknob. It's not whispering. It's a light, rhythmic tapping. Alex's eyes dart around the room and land on the wall between the living room and the kitchen. No, 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 no. That's the kitchen window. The back of the house. He's never done that. He's always at the front door. It's always the same. Why is he breaking the pattern? He gets up slowly, staying low to the ground. The phone camera is our view as he creeps out of the living room and into the dark hall. The tapping continues, steady and patient. Tap, tap, tap. Alex holds the phone out as he rounds the corner into the kitchen. He ducks behind the central island, peeking over. The camera focuses on the kitchen window over the sink. Pressed against the glass is a face. His face. It's not a silhouette. It's perfectly clear in the moonlight. Every line, every pore. And it's smiling. The smile is the most horrible thing Alex has ever seen. It's too wide, a grotesque, unnatural stretch of his own lips. The eyes are cold, empty, and dead. The thing at the window slowly raises a hand. It's holding something. A phone. An exact copy of the one Alex is using. It tilts its screen toward the window. On the screen is a picture. It's a photo of Alex. He's asleep, slumped on the living room couch, his mouth hanging open. The photo was taken from just a few feet away. It was taken from inside the house. Asterisk. A choked, strangled sound rips from Alex's throat. The camera jolts as he stumbles back against the kitchen island. His mind is screaming. When was that taken? He hasn't slept on the couch in weeks. Has he? The days, the nights, they're all a blur. Did he nod off for a minute? An hour? Was it already in the house while he slept? He can't breathe. He finally finds his voice, a raw, ragged scream. What are you? What do you want? The face at the window, the smiling copy, just watches him. The smile stretches even wider, a horrifying flash of teeth. Then it speaks. The voice isn't a distorted whisper anymore. It's his own voice, perfectly clear, right outside the glass. It says, "You know what you did, Alex. You know what you buried under the old Miller Bridge when you were 17. You think you got away? You didn't. You just left the door open for me." The color drains from Alex's face. Pure, absolute shock takes over. It's a secret he's carried for over a decade. A secret no one else alive knows. He feels his legs give out. The doppelganger's smile vanishes. Its face goes blank. It lowers its phone and raises one finger. It's pointing. Not at Alex. It's pointing toward the front of the house. Confused, terrified, Alex rips his eyes from the kitchen window for a single second. The camera's view pans with his gaze down the dark hallway to the front door. The video feed explodes into a violent storm of digital noise and static. The audio becomes a deafening shriek of electronic screaming and glitches. It lasts for 3 seconds. Then silence. The static cuts. The image returns, but the perspective is different. The phone is on the floor, on its side. It's pointing up at the front door from the inside. The armchair is still pushed against it. We hear footsteps. They're inside the house, walking on the hardwood floor, moving away from the front door, deeper into the home. Alex's panicked breathing is gone. A final, sickeningly clear sound cuts the silence. The slow, deliberate turn of the deadbolt on the front door. A loud, final click as the lock is disengaged. A long, terrible silence follows. 10 seconds. 15. Nothing. The recording ends. There's someone living between the seconds. Okay, so this is entry number 12, I think. My therapist, Dr. Evans, he said I should keep a video log to try and document the episodes. He calls it chronodysplasia. It's a name I'm pretty sure he just invented for me, because when you search for it, nothing. Not a single medical paper, no research zip. He says my brain is failing to render time seamlessly. He says for most people, life is like a movie. For me, ... It's more like a corrupted video file. There are these gaps, tiny little skips, a dropped frame in my own perception, but I feel them. And the craziest part, I think there's someone in there, living in them. It didn't start this bad. At first, it was just a flicker, a kind of visual stutter. I'd be pouring coffee, and for a split second, the mug would be empty, then it would be full again. It just skipped the whole part of me pouring. I'd turn a page in a book, and my hand would just be on one side, then instantly on the other. Tiny little jumps in reality. Dr. Evans promised me it was all in my head, just a neurological misfire. His best guess was something called saccadic masking. You know, how your brain just deletes the blur when your eyes move fast. He said my brain was just over-deleting. But here's the thing. A camera doesn't have a brain. It can't have a neurological disorder. It just records what's there. This is from log 4. I was just recording the room, hoping to catch something. Anything that would prove I wasn't making it up. For hours, nothing. Just my quiet, empty apartment. The clock on the wall just ticking away. But then, at 3:17 in the morning, it happened. A skip, right there on the recording. The second hand on my clock jumps. It goes from the 22-second mark, straight to 24. It didn't just speed up. A whole second just vanished. My doctor says it's impossible, that it has to be a technical fault. But I've tested the clock. I've tested the camera. They're fine. He tried to explain it away with everything he could think of. Power fluctuations, software glitches, electromagnetic interference. So I set up more cameras. Multiple cameras, all on different power sources, different batteries, different memory cards. And the skips started happening on all of them at the exact same time, down to the microsecond. That's not a hardware problem. That's a reality problem. He told me that intense fear can warp our sense of time. But what the cameras caught wasn't a warped feeling. It wasn't a distortion. It was an absence. A literal hole in the data, showing a moment in time that was recorded, processed, and then just gone, leaving a scar in the file. I got obsessed. My apartment is a total mess of lenses and microphones now. I don't sleep anymore. I just watch the monitors. I just sit here in the dark, surrounded by all these little glowing screens, hunting for skips. The silence is the worst part. It's so loud, you know. In the absolute quiet, you start hearing things that aren't there. Or maybe they are there, and the noise of a normal day just covers them up. I started analyzing the audio from the skips. In that tiny little space between one sound and the next, there's something. If you crank the volume way up, filter out the static, you can hear it. It's not a voice. It's like the sound of wet cloth ripping, but stretched over a split second. A sound that has no reason to be in my apartment. Then I saw it. It was during one of those nights, just staring at the screen. A single frame, wedged into a skip that was less than 1/30th of a second long. At first, it just looked like a flicker of digital noise. But I slowed it down, going frame by agonizing frame, and there it was. It looked human, but wrong. The proportions were all stretched, like when you see your reflection in a funhouse mirror. It was just a silhouette, this uncanny shape that felt totally alien. It was in my room, standing by my window, for one single frame. An image of something that, as far as I knew, was never there. This wasn't a glitch in my head. This was a peek into a space that shouldn't exist. They're happening more often now. The skips are getting longer, and the figure, it's getting clearer. It's not just some vague shadow anymore. In a skip from 2 nights ago, I saw its hand. It was long and bony, with way too many joints, and it was just resting on the back of my chair. It was there for 3 whole frames. And things are changing in the apartment. The skips aren't just on the recordings. They're bleeding into my life. I'll feel a glitch, that little lapse, and when the world snaps back, something's different. A book I left on the table is suddenly on the floor. The door I know I locked is now open a crack. It's this quiet, subtle violation of my home that's making me feel like I'm losing my mind. I think it knows I can see it. The glitches feel different now. They feel intentional. That ripping sound in the gaps is clearer. It almost sounds like a whisper, this sibilant hiss that I can't quite understand. Last night, I was watching the main camera, the one pointed down the hall. For a full second, the video froze. Then, a single new frame appeared. It was the figure, but this time it was right up close to the camera. bent over, like it was peering right into the lens. Its face was just a blur of distorted features, but I swear I could see something that looked like a huge empty eye socket. It's not just a ghost in the machine anymore. It's watching me back. Dr. Evans has no more ideas. He says this is beyond any known temporal disorder. He thinks I'm having hallucinations, that maybe some past trauma is creating this thing. He can't explain the footage, though. He can't explain why 4 different cameras skip at the exact same instant, or why things are moving in my apartment. He can't explain the picture of a figure that shouldn't exist. I don't know what else to do. I'm putting this online because I'm terrified. Has anyone ever felt this? A skip in the world? A moment that just disappears? If you have, please just say something. I really need to know I'm not the only one who sees what's living in the quiet. It's happening. It's not just skipping anymore. The clock, you can hear it. It's getting slow. The gaps, they're getting so much longer. Oh God, I saw it. I just saw it with my own eyes. It's not on the screen. It's here. In the room with me, please. The mask smiled wider every time I looked away. I've always had a thing for antiques. My small apartment is crammed with forgotten treasures, each with a story I can only guess at. There's a tarnished silver locket, a stack of faded postcards, a little ship in a bottle. They're quiet companions. But the porcelain mask I bought last week, its story is still being written, and I'm terrified I won't be around for the end. It was an unnerving thing from the jump, picked up from a cluttered corner of a shop. It smelled like dust and decay. It has this painted-on smile that's just a little too wide, a little too knowing. I hung it on my bedroom wall, right across from my bed. An odd choice, I know, but I was drawn to its strangeness. The first night, as I shut off the light, I glanced at it one last time. For just a split second, I swear the smile had stretched, the corners curling up just a tiny bit higher. I shook it off a trick of the light, my brain playing games in the dark. It wasn't. Look, I'm not the type to believe in ghosts or curses. I'm a rational person. I believe in old houses settling, pipes groaning, and the mind playing tricks on you. When I first saw the mask, buried under a pile of old lace, I just thought it was a unique piece. The porcelain was smooth and white, covered in these delicate, almost invisible cracks that looked like tiny veins. It had rosy cheeks, painted with a cheerfulness that just felt wrong next to its hollow, dead eyes. And that smile. It was a fixed, pleasant grin, but it didn't reach the eyes at all. It was a mask hiding something else. That's what got me. In psychology, right? Masks are all about hiding your true self. I thought it was a profound, if creepy, statement piece. The shopkeeper, a withered old man who looked as ancient as everything he was selling, barely glanced up when I put it on the counter. He just mumbled a price, took my money, and wrapped it in yellowed newspaper without a single word. I took it home and hung it in my bedroom. I wanted to see it every day, to get used to its unsettling vibe. That first night, after I saw what I thought was a change, I actually got out of bed and flipped the light back on. I stood there for a long time, just staring. It was just a mask. The smile was exactly how I remembered it from the shop, painted, static, unmoving. I felt like an idiot, my heart pounding for no good reason. I told myself I was just overtired, spooked by a new, creepy thing in my most personal space. I went back to bed, made sure my back was to it, and forced myself to sleep. But the next morning, that feeling was back. That little sliver of wrongness, a detail that was out of place. The curve of the lips, it looked happier, almost triumphant. The difference was so small, I couldn't be sure. But it's the kind of doubt that just chews at you. The kind that whispers you're the one who's messed up, not the world around you. The days that followed were a slow slide into a very specific kind of insanity. The horror wasn't some sudden jump scare moment. It was this creeping, gradual change. It was a battle for my own sanity, and I was losing. I started testing it, trying to catch it in the act. I'd set up my phone to record it for hours, only to scrub through the footage and see absolutely nothing. The mask just stayed perfectly still, its painted smile mocking me. But the second I'd put the phone down, the moment I'd turn to grab a drink or answer the door, the paranoia would come crashing back. I'd look again, and the change would be there. The smile would be wider. The painted red lips would look like they were stretching thin and tight across the porcelain. I tried to explain it away. It had to be the light, right? My apartment gets weird shadows all day. I'd repeat that to myself over and over, but I knew it was a lie. I knew because the feeling of being watched was becoming constant. It felt like a physical pressure on the back of my neck. I started sleeping with my bedroom door shut, but that was so much worse. My imagination, now totally juiced up on fear, just ran wild with what the mask might be doing in there, all by itself in the dark. So I started documenting it differently. I took a high-resolution photo every morning from the exact same spot. For the first few days, when I put them side by side, I could almost convince myself I was crazy. But by day 5, you couldn't deny it. The calm smile from the first picture had twisted into this wide, smug grin. It looked hungry. My whole world started to shrink. I stopped having people over. I mean, how do you explain it? How do you tell someone you're being terrorized by a piece of ceramic on your wall? The paranoia was becoming a part of me. I couldn't trust my own eyes. I felt totally trapped in a reality that nobody else could see. After a week of this, with barely any sleep, I just broke. My friend Mark called, asking why I'd gone dark. I couldn't hold it in. The words just came spilling out the mask. The smile, the feeling of being watched, the photos. I'm sure I sounded completely unhinged. There was this long, awkward pause on the other end of the phone. "Dude," he finally said, and I could hear him trying to sound careful. "It's a mask. It's a creepy mask, and you're letting it get in your head. You're stressed. Why don't you just take it down?" His reaction was exactly what I expected, and it was crushing. He wasn't being a jerk. He was being logical. To him, the answer was simple, but to me, it felt impossible. The thought of touching it, of pulling it off the wall, filled me with this deep animal fear. What if it didn't want to be moved? By then, the paranoia ran so deep that I truly believed the mask had intentions. I felt like it was testing me, wanting to see me crack. I tried to laugh it off with Mark, told him he was probably right. But after we hung up, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever. I was completely alone with this thing. This horror was mine and mine alone, and it was eating me alive. My own home had become enemy territory, and the source of it all was just hanging on my wall, smiling. I don't know if anyone listening can understand what that feels like, to have a fear that is so real and vivid to you, but completely illogical to everyone else. If you've ever had an experience you just couldn't explain, something that made you question reality itself, I'd honestly like to read about it in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, think about subscribing. Sometimes it just helps to know you're not the only one. 2 weeks in, I hit my breaking point. I was a wreck. Not eating, not sleeping. My thoughts were just a constant, looping track of fear. I couldn't live like that anymore. I had to face it down. That night, I did the exact opposite of what I'd been doing. I didn't hide. I opened my bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed, and just stared at it. I was going to wait it out, to prove to myself it was just an object. For hours, I sat there, my eyes burning, refusing to look away. And for hours, nothing. The mask just stared back, its smile now locked in that wide, triumphant grin it had achieved. It was grotesquely cheerful. My whole body ached from the tension. My eyes were watering, begging me to blink, to just look away for a second. But I held on. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message. It was pure reflex. Before I could even think, my eyes darted from the mask down to the screen. Not even for a full second. When I looked back up, a gasp caught in my throat. The smile, it had broken free. It wasn't just paint anymore. It was a gaping, cavernous grin that stretched from ear to ear, splitting the porcelain. The material itself had warped, cracking and splintering under some impossible force. It was a silent, screaming expression of pure hatred, the joy of a predator that has finally trapped its prey. And I heard it then, a faint, high-pitched sound, like fine china cracking under intense heat. It was the sound of its own face breaking as its smile grew. Pure, animal terror just took over. I scrambled backward off the bed, hit the floor hard, and crab-walked out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I just leaned against it, my whole body shaking. The rational part of my brain was gone, replaced by one single thought. Get it out. After what felt like forever, I pushed myself up. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and a thick canvas bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold on. I threw the door open, forcing myself not to look at the mask's new, horrifying face. I just rushed in, ripped it off the wall. It felt disturbingly light, like an empty bug casing, and shoved it into the bag. I ran out of my apartment, down the stairs, and into the alley out back. I put the bag on the cold, damp concrete. I raised the hammer, my knuckles white. This was it. I was going to smash it into 1,000 pieces, grind it to dust. But as I stood there, hammer in the air, a different kind of fear washed over me. It was a cold, sharp dread that was somehow worse than the panic. In old stories, masks can be vessels, right? What if the object wasn't the problem? What if it was just a container? If I shattered it, what would I be letting out? Into my apartment? Into my life? The thought froze me solid. The fear of what I couldn't see was suddenly more powerful than the fear of the thing I could. I couldn't do it. I didn't smash the mask. I couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I sealed the bag with half a roll of duct tape, drove to a 24-hour storage facility clear across town, and buried it in the back of a new unit. It's behind stacks of boxes filled with old junk. Out of sight. It's been a month. My apartment is quiet now. The wall where it hung is just a blank, white space. But I'm not free. The horror of it all left a scar. The paranoia didn't go away with the mask. It just moved inside me. It's not in the object anymore. It's in my head. Now I scan faces in a crowd, and my heart jumps when I see someone with a smile that's a little too wide. I got rid of the mask. I locked it away where it can't hurt anyone. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone and catch my reflection in a dark window, for just a split second, I swear my own smile is a little too wide. I tried to leave the night shift, but it followed me home. I thought quitting my job at the old steel mill would finally be the end of it. The end of the sleepless nights, the strange whispers in the dark. I was so wrong. The factory is behind me, sure, but the night shift followed me home. For 2 years, my entire world was the sickly yellow glow of industrial sodium lamps. I worked the graveyard shift at Blackwood Steelworks, a place that time and apparently maintenance had long forgotten. The factory was this carcass of 20th century ambition, just a sprawling maze of rusted catwalks, silent conveyor belts, and hulking machines that always seemed to groan in their sleep. My job was simple. Walk the perimeter, check the gauges on the handful of furnaces that still burn, and make a note of anything unusual. And things were always unusual. You get used to the factory's quirks. You learned that the shriek of metal from Section C wasn't a dying machine. That's just what Section C did at 2:17 in the morning. You learn to ignore the whispers that seem to ride the hum of the ventilation, because everyone heard them. They were faint, like a radio playing in another room, in a language you could never quite make out. You learned that the quick shadows you'd see, darting between the presses, were just tricks of the light from the swinging lamps overhead. We all had our ways of coping. Barry, a guy who'd been there 15 years, always said the factory was just breathing. He'd say it's an old building, full of drafts and memories. I bought it. It made a weird kind of sense. The cold spots, that feeling of being watched, the sudden sharp smell of ozone in a corridor. It was sealed off. It was all just part of the job. The fear was manageable, predictable. It was contained inside that 10-foot chain-link fence. At least, that's what I believed. The whispers stayed in the fence, the shadows stayed in the corners, and as long as they played by the rules, I could do my job. The real world, the one with sunlight, was waiting for me every morning when I clocked out. The decision to quit wasn't something that built up over time. It was a sudden, clean break. It happened on a Tuesday technically a Wednesday, around 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in the main furnace chamber, this cavernous space that felt like a cathedral to some forgotten god of fire. The air was always thick with heat and the smell of hot metal. It was supposed to be empty. The day shift handled the smelting. My job was just to watch the cooling temperatures. I was logging the numbers on my clipboard when I heard it. It wasn't the usual whisper from the vents. This was close. It was a voice, clear as day, right over my left shoulder. It said one word, "Don't." I froze, my pen just hovering over the paper. The sound was so crisp, so real, that I fully expected to turn around and see Barry standing there, about to tell me I was reading the wrong gauge. But when I whipped around, there was nothing. Just 60 feet of empty, checkered plate floor between me and the far wall. There's only one entrance to that chamber, and I was facing it. No one could have gotten behind me. My heart was hammering. I just stood there for a full minute, listening. The only sound was the low electric thrum of the cooling pumps. Then the air got cold. A sudden, shocking drop in temperature that had absolutely no business being in a furnace room. I started backing away, slowly, my eyes scanning the shadows. That's when I saw it. A shadow, completely detached from anything that could cast it, flowing like black ink across the floor. It wasn't darting away this time. It was pooling in the corner, growing darker and taller. I didn't run. I walked. I walked right out of that furnace room, down the corridor, and straight to the supervisor's office. I dropped my clipboard and keycard on his desk. He was asleep in his chair and barely moved. I didn't bother waking him. I just walked out, pushed through the main gate, and never looked back. The relief that washed over me was huge. It was over. I was free. That first week was pure bliss. Getting reacquainted with the sun was a strange and wonderful thing. My body was a wreck, of course. My sleep schedule was a total disaster. I was tired all the time, passing out on the couch at 5 p.m. only to jolt awake at 2 a.m. My brain screaming that I was late for my shift. This is normal, I kept telling myself. It's just what happens when you quit the night shift. My body's clock is shattered. It'll take time to fix. The first real sign something was wrong came on the 5th night. I was in bed, in that shallow, unsatisfying sleep that had become my new normal, when a sound from the kitchen woke me up. It was a faint, metallic scraping noise. I just laid there, listening. It's the ice maker, I thought. The house settling. But then a smell hit me. That sharp, specific smell of hot metal and ozone. The smell of the factory. I got up and padded to the kitchen. The room was empty. The smell was already fading. I checked the locks on the doors, the windows. Everything was secure. I stood there in the silence of my own home. A silence that suddenly felt wrong. It felt thin, brittle, like it could just shatter. I tried to write it off as a phantom smell, a memory triggered by stress. My brain was just rewiring itself. The factory was still stuck in there, and it would fade. Before I continue, I have to say, this kind of stuff can make you feel like you're going crazy. If you've ever had an experience that you just couldn't explain, or if you just love stories that make your skin crawl, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. It's a weird world out there, and you're welcome in this corner of it. It didn't fade. It got worse. The whispers started up a few days later. At first, I only heard them when the house was dead silent. They were distant, distorted, like they were coming through a bad walkie-talkie, the same jumbled murmurs from the factory vents. I'd be trying to read a book, and I'd have to stop, straining to hear. But the second I focused on the sound, it was gone. I blamed my hearing, my exhaustion, the years of working in a loud factory. But I started running out of excuses. The whispers got more frequent, and they weren't waiting for the silence anymore. I'd hear them over the TV or under the music playing from my phone. Then came the shadows. They started in my peripheral vision, just like they had at the factory. A flicker of movement down the hall, a dark shape you'd glimpse in the reflection of a dark window. I'd snap my head to look, and nothing. My home, my sanctuary, started to feel alien. It started to feel like the factory. The air in certain rooms would get freezing cold for no reason. I'd walk into the living room and get hit with that same oppressive feeling of being watched, that heavy air feeling from the catwalks. I started sleeping with the lights on, but it didn't help. The shadows just seemed to get darker, their edges sharper. The moment I knew I wasn't just tired anymore came on a Sunday night. I was at the sink washing dishes, my back to the kitchen doorway. A whisper slid through the room, clearer than it had ever been. It wasn't just a murmur. It was a piece of a sentence. "Gauge is dropping," it hissed, the voice thin and staticky. My blood went cold. That was a phrase I'd written on my clipboard 100 times. I slowly turned off the water, and the silence of the house just rushed in. And I saw it. Standing in the doorway to the hall was a tall, slender shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light. This thing had depth. It had form. It was the silhouette of a man in work coveralls. It just stood there for a second, totally still, before it dissolved back into the dim light of the hallway. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't in my head anymore. It was in my house. The confrontation I'd been dreading finally happened about a week later. It was 3:15. My body still treated this hour with a kind of grim respect. It was the time my shift at the factory would have ended, the moment I could finally go home. Now, there was no home to go to. I was sitting on my couch in the dark, wide awake, when the main fuse for the house tripped. The entire world just plunged into a sudden, suffocating black. My heart seized. I sat there, paralyzed, just listening. The silence was absolute. And then, a sound. The heavy, rhythmic clank, clank, clank of machinery. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the house, from everywhere at once. It was the sound of the number 2 conveyor belt, a machine that had been broken for a decade, but whose ghost I heard every single night at the steelworks. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely hold my phone. I fumbled with it and turned on the flashlight, its beam cutting a nervous little path through the darkness. I swept it across the living room, empty. I pointed it toward the kitchen, and there it was. It was standing by my refrigerator. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It was solid. A man, or the shape of one, dressed in dark, oil-stained coveralls. I couldn't see a face, just a deep, black void under the brim of a phantom hard hat. The clanking got louder, seeming to come from its very being. It didn't move toward me. It just stood there, an impossible piece of the factory floor, transplanted into my kitchen. Slowly, it raised one hand. My entire body tensed up, but it didn't point. It didn't threaten. It just waved. A slow, lazy, familiar wave. The kind of tired, end-of-shift gesture I'd given my coworkers 1,000 times. Then it turned its head, and in the blackness where its face should have been, for just a fraction of a second, I saw a faint orange glow, like the last dying embers in a furnace. The clanking stopped. The figure dissolved, and the power clicked back on, the living room light buzzing to life, revealing an empty, silent room. I sat on my couch until the sun came up, just shaking. The thing wasn't hostile. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was just there. It was on its shift. It had clocked in. That wave wasn't a threat. It was a greeting, a coworker. And that's when the chilling realization settled deep in my bones. I hadn't quit my job. I'd just been transferred. I brought my work home with me. The company, whatever it is still my employer. I just have a new, smaller, more intimate territory to patrol. The factory gates are miles away, but my new night shift has just begun. I took the job no one wanted. Now I know why I took the job that nobody else wanted. And now I know why. I needed cash for college, so I took a night security gig at an old, abandoned hospital that's been boarded up since the 80s. I figured the worst I'd have to deal with was soul-crushing boredom. Maybe chase off a couple of teenagers now and then. But on my very first night, a loud crash from down a pitch-black corridor made one thing horrifyingly clear. I wasn't alone. At first, I thought, it's just the building settling. I was wrong. Dead wrong. It all started with a flyer I saw on the corkboard at the student union. Night security, quiet gig, good pay. Seemed perfect, right? The job was at the old St. Jude's Hospital, this creepy place on the edge of town that had been collecting dust and ghost stories for decades. Kids I went to high school with used to dare each other to sneak in. They'd come back with stories about weird noises and just a general feeling of dread, but I brushed it all off. I needed tuition money, and getting paid to just sit in an empty building all night sounded like the easiest cash I'd ever make. The hiring process was weird and way too fast. I met this guy, a Mr. Abernathy, at the hospital's front gate. He looked like he hadn't slept in a year. Instead of a real interview, he basically just shoved a heavy ring of keys and a faded map of the hospital into my hands. The guy had these deep, dark circles under his eyes and this nervous twitch in his left eye. "Your job is simple," he said, and I noticed he wouldn't quite look at me. "Walk the perimeter when your shift starts. Then do a full interior patrol at midnight, and again at 4 a.m. The main thing is to make sure nobody gets in." And he paused. "Don't go to the 4th floor, the East Wing. It was condemned for structural issues." He said that last part really fast, like he was trying to rip off a bandage, and then he was just gone, leaving me there, standing in front of this massive, rotting building. The whole place smelled like stale antiseptic and damp decay. Paint was peeling off the walls, like sunburned skin, and everything, absolutely everything, was covered in a thick layer of dust. The silence was heavy, you know, the kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound like a drum. For the first few hours, it was exactly what I signed up for. Total boredom. I just sat in the little security office by the entrance, staring at a wall of dead camera monitors and scrolling on my phone. The only sounds were the buzz of the single fluorescent light overhead and the wind rattling the boarded-up windows. It was almost peaceful in a super creepy way. I remember thinking, this job is a piece of cake. The stories are just stories. Midnight rolled around, so I grabbed my big flashlight and the keys to start my first patrol. The map was basically useless. The ink was so faded you could barely read it, and in the dark, every single hallway looked exactly the same. My flashlight beam was this nervous, bouncing circle in a sea of black. Every little sound, and I mean every sound, the creak of my own boots, a drip of water somewhere, the scuttling of a rat was amplified 100 times in the dead quiet. I was on the second floor, which the map said was the old surgical wing when it happened. From the far end of this long, dark corridor, a sound just ripped through the silence. It wasn't a creak or a groan. It was a crash. A loud, violent, metallic crash, like someone had hurled a metal tray full of surgical tools against a tile wall. My heart flew into my throat. I just froze. Every muscle in my body tensed up, just listening. I called out, my voice sounding pathetic and shaky in the huge, empty space. "Hello? Anybody there?" Nothing. Just more silence. My mind started racing. A squatter? Maybe a raccoon got in somehow? I had to go check it out. That was the job. I gripped my flashlight like it was a club and started walking down that hall. Slow step by slow step. My light danced over old gurneys just left in the middle of the corridor and wheelchairs, parked by the walls like their owners had just vanished into thin air. The hallway was pitch black, and the air got colder and colder the deeper I went. I finally reached the end where the sound came from. It was an old operating theater. The double doors were open just a crack. I nudged one open, and the hinges groaned. I swept my light across the room. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Just the big operating table in the middle of the room, the observation decks above, the cabinets on the walls. But then my light hit the floor, and there it was. A dented stainless steel surgical tray lying upside down, and scattered all around it were these rusty, wicked-looking surgical tools. It was the sound I heard. Exactly. But there was no one there. The windows were sealed. No way in or out. It was just me, the cold, and this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. I tried to explain it away. Maybe a ceiling tile fell? But I looked up, and the ceiling was perfectly intact. I backed out of that room, my heart hammering my ribs, and decided I was going to finish this patrol as fast as humanly possible. The unease I'd felt earlier had curdled into pure, gut-wrenching fear. Back in the so-called safety of the security office, I found this old logbook. Must have been left by the other guards. I started flipping through it. Most of the entries were what you'd expect. All clear, no issues. But as I got closer to the present, the entries got weird. One from a few weeks back said, "Heard footsteps on the 4th floor again. Reported to Abernathy. He said to ignore it." Another one, "Call light in room 413 went off tonight. Power to that wing is cut. I didn't go check." And then the last entry from the guard who worked right before me, dated just a week ago. It was just one chilling sentence. "It knows I'm here. It followed me to the door. This is my last shift. The 4th floor. The one place Abernathy told me to stay away from." Suddenly, I had this insane urge to see what was up there, but his warning, and that logbook, kept my feet glued to the ground floor. For now, anyway. The rest of the night was just one thing after another. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the distinct sound of a wheelchair rolling slowly down the hall right outside my office. I peeked through the little window in the door. The hallway was empty. A little later, I heard something that sounded like a child laughing, faint and echoing from one of the deserted wings. Each sound by itself was subtle enough that I could have convinced myself I was just tired and hearing things. But all of them together, they were painting a terrifying picture. By 4 in the morning, patrol was torture. I swear every shadow was moving. I kept whipping my head around, feeling like something was right there, just at the edge of my vision. On the 3rd floor, I walked past a room and saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. In the thick layer of dust on a little bedside table, someone had written one word, "Get." I just stared at it, my blood turning to ice. I hadn't been in that room. Nobody had. I backed away, slowly, not taking my eyes off that dark doorway, until I was back in the main hall. That was it. I was done. Screw the money, screw college. I was in the office, grabbing my jacket, ready to just walk out and never look back, when every single light in the hospital went out. Not just my office light, everything. Even the emergency lights, which Abernathy swore were on a separate generator, didn't kick on. I was plunged into this thick, suffocating blackness. And then I heard it. A new sound. Not a crash, not a whisper. Footsteps. Coming from the stairs. They were coming down. From the 4th floor. I fumbled for my phone. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped it. I finally got the flashlight on and pointed its weak little beam at the office door. The footsteps got louder. Closer. It wasn't a heavy, mannish tread, but it wasn't light either. It was slow, deliberate, and there was this faint, wet, dragging sound with each step, like something heavy being pulled along. The footsteps stopped, right outside my door. I held my breath. The silence was somehow even worse. All I could hear was the blood roaring in my ears. Through the small, grimy window in the door, a sheet blocked the little bit of moonlight that was filtering in. It was tall, unnaturally thin, a silhouette that was darker than the shadows around it. Then the doorknob started to turn, slowly. I didn't think, I just moved. I threw my entire body against the door, trying to hold it shut. The thing on the other side pushed back, and it was strong, shockingly strong. The old wood of the door groaned, and I could feel it starting to splinter under the pressure. It wasn't making any sound, just this immense, silent force. I was screaming my head off, but I couldn't even hear it over the frantic pounding in my chest. I knew, with a certainty that made no sense, that if that door opened, I was going to die. Just as I felt the lock start to give, a deafening screech of feedback erupted from the old PA system. It was so loud it felt like it was shaking the entire building. And just like that, the pressure on the door vanished. The footsteps started again, but this time they were moving away, back towards the stairs, and they were moving fast. I didn't wait around. The second those footsteps faded, I bolted. I didn't grab my bag, didn't lock the door. I just ran. I ran out of that hospital, and I didn't stop running until I could see the streetlights of my own neighborhood. I found a payphone and called Abernathy around 7 in the morning. I just told him I quit. He didn't even sound surprised. He just sighed and said, "I'll mail you your check for the one night." I never went back. I found another job, a much more boring one at the campus library, but I still have nightmares. Sometimes I dream about that long, dark corridor. Sometimes I see that tall, thin figure standing at the end of it, just waiting. I never saw its face, but I know, without a doubt, that it saw mine. They say some places hold on to the pain that happened inside them, that the walls remember. I believe it now. I took the job no one wanted because I was broke. Now I know why it was really empty. It's not because of boredom or ghosts. It's because you're not guarding an empty building. You're just locking yourself inside with whatever it is that never left. If this story gave you the chills, make sure you like and subscribe to Halfway Dark for more. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done? Every night the building rearranges itself day 7. The front door is just gone. I've checked. And the windows? They open into other rooms on this floor now. I thought I'd found the perfect apartment. A fresh start. A quiet place to just disappear for a while. Turns out, the building had other plans. It's funny how fast you can forget what normal feels like. Just 2 weeks ago, this place was my sanctuary. Apartment 14B. It was perfect. Almost suspiciously so. The rent was a joke for this neighborhood. A beautiful pre-war building with character, overlooking a quiet, tree-lined street. The listing photos didn't even do it justice. Sunlight just poured through the massive bay window in the living room, hitting the fresh paint and gleaming hardwood floors. It had good bones the realtor kept saying. Solid. I needed that. After the noise of the last year, the breakup, the job I quit, the whole city feeling like it was closing in on me, the silence at 14B was like a miracle. I spent the first 3 days unpacking, arranging my little life into these new, quiet corners. I bought a new coffee mug, a dumb little luxury, and set it on the kitchen counter. I bought a ficus tree and put it by the window. I was building a life here. I was safe. I went to bed that first Sunday night with a feeling I hadn't had in years. Peace. A sense that things were finally going to be still. That stillness shattered on Monday. It was small, so small I was sure I was losing my mind. The bathroom door, which had definitely been on the left side of the hallway, was now on the right. I just stood there for a full minute, coffee in hand, my brain short-circuiting. It was impossible. I figured I was just tired, still turned around from the move. You know how it is. I shook my head, laughed at myself, and got on with my day. On Tuesday, the closet in my bedroom vanished. It was just gone. In its place was a smooth, uninterrupted wall, not a single seam or crack. A fine white powder of plaster dust coated the floorboards where it used to be. That's when the first real spike of fear hit me. Not panic, not yet. Just a cold dread that settled deep in my gut. I spent an hour running my hands over the wall, knocking on it, listening to the solid, mocking thud. My clothes were gone. The entire closet was just gone. Night became the enemy. I'd lie awake and just listen. I'd hear things, not the usual creaks and groans of an old building. This was different. It was a low, grinding sound, like stone dragging on stone. It seemed to come from deep inside the walls. A vibration that hummed through the floor, right up through the frame of my bed. It sounded like construction. By day 4, I started mapping the place. I grabbed a piece of printer paper and sketched the layout as I remembered it. Then, I drew the layout as it was now. The living room was smaller. The kitchen suddenly had a pantry I'd never seen before. It was like living in the Winchester Mystery House, a place built by a ghost to confuse other ghosts. Except this wasn't some sprawling mansion. It was my tiny 600-square-foot apartment, and it was actively rewriting itself around me. The real soul-crushing terror set in on day 5. That was the day I realized the windows didn't lead outside anymore. The beautiful bay window that sold me on this place, it now looked into a bedroom. Not my bedroom. It was decorated with strange furniture I'd never seen. My phone had no signal. The Wi-Fi was dead. My beautiful, solid front door was still there, charming brass knocker and all. But when I opened it, there was no hallway. Just a brick wall, so close I could touch it. I was sealed in. The building wasn't just changing. It was digesting me. You learn pretty quickly that panic is useless when you're trapped. It just burns up your energy and leaves you with nothing. So I switched gears. I stopped being a victim and started being an observer, a scientist in my own personal architectural hell. My journal became my most prized possession. Every morning, I'd wake up, take a deep breath, and document the changes. I used a roll of masking tape to outline my furniture on the floor, only to find the tape in a mangled pile in a corner the next day, the furniture dragged to a new spot. I needed a constant, a fixed point in this shifting nightmare. For days, I found nothing. The building was pure chaos. Stairs would appear in the middle of my living room, leading nowhere but a solid ceiling. Doors would manifest, only to open into another part of my own apartment, creating a looping, nonsensical path. The air got thick with the smell of plaster and something else, something old and metallic, like dried blood. Ghostly footsteps, which I'd first dismissed as neighbors, now sounded like they were in the room with me, pacing just over my shoulder. Then I found it. It wasn't a feature of the apartment, but a flaw, a mistake. In the corner of the kitchen, Etched into the floorboards where the refrigerator used to be was a symbol. A small, five-pointed star inside a circle, carved crudely into the wood. A pentagram. The first morning I saw it, it was in the kitchen. The next morning, after a particularly violent shift that stole my bedroom entirely and replaced it with a long, narrow corridor, I found the symbol again. It had moved. It was now in the center of this new hallway. It was my North Star, my Rosetta Stone. The building could change anything it wanted, but it couldn't get rid of this mark. It was part of the design, part of the malevolent intelligence behind the chaos. A glimmer of hope, sharp and painful, cut through my despair. If I could understand the pattern, maybe I could predict the shifts. Maybe I could find the front door when it decided to reappear. But the building knew. The moment I started tracking the symbol, the changes became hostile. It wasn't just rearranging anymore. It was fighting back. The grinding sounds at night grew louder, more violent. One morning, I woke up to find the ceiling in the living room was only 4 feet high. I had to crawl on my hands and knees to get to the kitchen. The building was trying to crush me. It was toying with me, seeing how much I could take before I broke. The footsteps weren't just pacing anymore. They were running. Frantic, heavy footfalls charging toward me, stopping just inches away. I never saw what made them, but I felt the air move as they rushed past. After 3 days of obsessive tracking, I had a theory. A crazy one, but it was all I had. The symbol wasn't moving randomly. It was moving in a spiral, slowly, methodically, toward the original geometric center of the apartment. The idea was simple and terrifying. When the symbol reached the center, the building would have to reset. And in that one fleeting moment, the original layout would snap back into place. The real front door would be there. I had to be ready. I gathered what I needed: a bottle of water, the heavy iron skillet from the kitchen, and my journal. I positioned myself as close to the center point as I could, in a space that was, for now, a cramped, windowless bathroom. I sat on the floor, my back against the cold tile, and waited. The grinding started right on schedule, a deafening roar, like 1,000 gears locking into place. The floor shook so violently, it knocked me onto my side. The lights flickered and died, plunging me into total darkness. The walls pressed in, the space shrinking until I could feel plaster on both shoulders. I could hear it, right next to my ear now, not grinding stone, but wet, ragged breathing. Then, silence. A single light flickered on. My front door. It was there, 20 feet away, exactly where it was supposed to be. I didn't think. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The iron skillet felt heavy and good in my hand. I sprinted across the familiar hardwood, my heart slamming against my ribs. The breathing sound was right behind me, keeping pace. I didn't dare look back. 5 more feet. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold brass of the doorknob. I threw the door open, expecting the hallway, expecting salvation. But it wasn't a hallway. It was a room. A vast circular room that couldn't possibly exist inside this building. The walls weren't plaster. They were a dark, pulsating tissue, and in the center of the floor, carved and glowing, was a massive version of the symbol I had been following. And I wasn't alone. Standing around the symbol were other people, a dozen of them, all silent, all staring at me with empty eyes. They wore clothes from different decades, a silent gallery of all the building's residents. One of them, a woman in a faded 1970s dress, slowly raised a hand and pointed, not at me, at an empty space beside her, an empty space in the circle. And that's when I understood. My frantic mapping, my desperate search for an escape, it was never about getting out. It was the final test. I wasn't solving a maze. I was proving I was worthy of becoming a permanent part of its design. The building doesn't rearrange itself anymore. It's perfect now. It has all its pieces, and I am its newest, most permanent resident. What do you think this place really is? A prison? A puzzle? Or something else? Let me know your theories in the comments.